One evening on the island of Sodor, Percy the small engine was pulling the mail train. As he stopped in Harlem Heights to fill up on water, he saw a familiar face. "Twanky?" he puffed. "What are you doing up here?" Twanky slowly turned around to face the green engine, and he said in a deep voice, "After I unintentionally started a war at Knapford Harbor, the bomb went off and I fell from a dock. Fortunately, I landed on a cargo ship. I was taken to the mainland for a few months. I now work here in Harlem Heights as I've been deemed too dangerous for harbors." "That's interesting. I hope you've learned your lesson from past experiences. I sometimes worry." "Oh, you slimy-ass caterpillar. There are many more things you need to worry about than that silly crane. You're always about to go down." An hour later, Percy arrived at Kirk Ronan, where he met Oliver and told him all about Twanky. "I wouldn't worry too much about him," replied Oliver. "I heard from Merlin when he brought some steel to Vickerstown that Twanky promised to never misbehave again." And Oliver took Percy's mail train since he was working the night shift and Percy had to go home. But as Oliver steamed through Henry's Forest, a ton of oil had spilled on the tracks. "Mr. Oliver," said Toad, "I think we're on the wrong line." Just then, Stepney was puffing down the line, shunting coal trucks from the opposite direction. Both engines tried to stop, but Oliver's wheels slipped on the oil and they crashed into each other and derailed. "Are you okay, Stepney?" asked Oliver and Chuck. "I think so," replied Stepney, still shaken up. Just then, he smelled something. "Oh no! The sparks from our funnel started a fire!" Both engines started panicking, but thankfully, the signalman saw the chaos and phoned the fire department. Soon, Fergus arrived with the fire department in tow. The blaze was quickly put out, and Henry's Forest was saved once again. "This wasn't your fault, you two," said Sir Topham Hatt. "Along with oil being spilled on the tracks, it appears the points were jammed. Not by ice or anything, but were soldered. There's an investigation happening right now." But that wasn't the only thing that went wrong. Later in the day, Gordon was pulling the express before coming to a stop in Harlem Heights. He was horrified at what he saw. "What is this?" he asked. "An express engine like me shouldn't have to deal with this nonsense." "I'm sorry, Gordon," said kind Edward, "but the bridge collapsed last night. Me and Murdoch were just called in to help clear the mess. Don't worry, we'll soon have your line cleared." "Also," added Murdoch, "it appears that the bridge was destroyed intentionally, as a bomb was shown being placed on the bridge according to security footage." "That ain't all," said a police officer who was nearby. "We also caught some footage of some vehicle saying something along the lines of 'you slimy-ass caterpillar.' There are many more things you need to worry about than that silly crane. Now our forensics team is searching for any kind of evidence, and they don't miss shit." "Who could those vehicles be that would pull this stunt?" asked Gordon. Later that day, Thomas was on his branch line when he saw two unusual-looking figures at Hackenbeck. "May I help you two?" "We're detectives who have been sent to investigate every line on the railway for evidence as to who destroyed the bridge in Harlem Heights and vandalized the points in Henry's Forest. We got a call about kidnapping and a hit-and-run in the town of Farquhar. Would you mind taking us to the station?" "Certainly," smiled Thomas. The detectives boarded Annie and Clarabelle, and Thomas set off. "If that evil little shit thinks he can ruin our plans, he has got another thing coming." Thomas soon arrived at Farquhar and dropped off the detectives. The detectives went into the town when Lorry 3 then pulled up alongside Thomas. "What do you want?" asked Thomas crossly. "You let these detectives on to us. Tomorrow, you will pay the price. It will be unexpected as you just innocently puff along your line." And he rolled away. Thomas was left in fear. "Don't worry, Thomas," encouraged Annie. "You'll be able to overcome this. You've been through things like this before." "Maybe you could ask Bertie for help on this," chipped in Clarabelle. "He told me he keeps a close eye on the roadway traffic on your branch line." Thomas felt better. Remembering the wise words of his coaches, he continued his work, and when he got back to the bus yard after being stopped by a signal, Bertie pulled up. "Hello, Thomas," he honked. "What's got you so concerned?" Thomas told him about the lorries. "I sent my driver to spy on them in the quarry when I was on break," replied Bertie, "and I have a plan to help you." And his driver handed Thomas a piece of paper. It was made by the lorry's drivers on how they would get Thomas into an accident tomorrow. "Review this with Toby tonight. I'm sure he has some great ideas on how to stop the lorries and Bulgy." I didn't think Bulgy cared this much about wanting to stop the railways. That night at the sheds, Thomas's driver showed Toby the plan, and Toby was more than happy to help. "First," said Toby, "you need to come up with traps wherever they plan to hit you. Ask some engines to help, and I'll go down your branch line tonight and get permission to set up closed-off areas to build traps for the lorries and Bulgy to fall into. Also, you have to believe in yourself." And the conversation continued for a while before the two engines went to sleep. The next morning, Thomas collected Annie and Clarabelle and pulled into Knapford to collect his passengers. "Get in quickly, please," he whistled. Then he heard Bulgy's horn. He was speeding for the station at high speed. Thomas pulled out just in time as Bulgy crashed into Henry's empty trucks and was badly damaged. "Take that, double-decker wrecker," laughed Henry. "You're not supposed to be here. You should have left an hour ago." "And I stayed behind to help a friend." "You won't get away with this." Thomas whistled to thank Henry and set off onto his branch line. He sped through the bus yard as Lorry 2 started speeding after him. "I'll drive onto the bridge and I'll drive off onto his coaches." But he didn't see the puddle of water that was on the road up ahead. "Who is responsible for this?" "Couldn't have been me. I belong in a museum." "If you want something done right, you do it yourself." And he sped out to crash into Thomas, hoping to put him out of action. But then... "What the f*** is wrong with most jumpersols driving on the side of the road? Actually, you're driving on the wrong side of the road, asswipe." Thomas soon reached Farquhar safely. Pleased and proud with the help of his friends, he'd outlasted the lorry's plans. But it wasn't over yet. "I'll get you if that's the last motherfucking thing I do," yelled Lorry 1 as he sped down the road above the speed limit. But he only ended up crashing into another vehicle head-on. "I don't know about that one, sunk," laughed Thomas. Before long, the detectives from Hackenbeck and work crews arrived. The lorries were discovered to be the suspects who'd vandalized the points and destroyed the Harlem Heights Bridge. "You have the right to remain silent," said a police officer. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "I was blackmailed into this," shouted Bulgy as he was taken away. "They held me at gunpoint." Bulgy was telling the truth, but video evidence hadn't been discovered. Yet. That night at the sheds, the detectives and Sir Topham Hatt came to thank Thomas. "A long time ago," said Sir Topham Hatt, "Thomas proved he is an indispensable part of my railway. He proved that once again today. He helped lead the detectives to the criminals who have been vandalizing railway property and putting lives in danger. Well done, Thomas." "Thank you, sir," smiled Thomas, "but I couldn't have done it without the help of Toby and Henry. It's important to never forget those who help you get to certain points in life."